It's big interview time here on SMX Insider, joined by Nate Ryan, one of my favorite motorsports reporters, now with NBC Motorsports. But I know you're probably known more for the NASCAR and IndyCar beat, sports cars and everything like that. But you've been a Supercross guy forever, like before you were even with NBC. So we go way back. I know you're a big fan of the sport, and you got to attend the race at Nashville. So what did you see, and what do you think of the 2023 season?
Well, I was pleased to find, Weege, that Supercross was exactly how I left it. The last time I was there, you mentioned, was Atlanta in 2017, I believe. Georgia Dome, that's actually the third time I had covered Supercross at the Georgia Dome. This time it was for NASCAR. But I'll never forget my first time at the Georgia Dome, 2010, the rider intros, the pyrotechnics, the event, the spectacle. It was amazing. And I got to follow around Ricky Carmichael that day and watch the literal Dale Earnhardt Pied Piper of Supercross just lead this incredible demographic, all these fans just following through the paddock area. And what I saw in Nashville this past weekend with NASCAR and NBC analyst Steve Woodhart, who was attending his first Supercross race, very similar to what I remember from 10 years ago when I was at Supercross. And I think that the demographics there are demographics that other racing series that I cover, NASCAR in particular, they would salivate over having all those young kids and families attending one of their races the way you get for Supercross races. I heard that there were nearly 30,000 people who were approved to go through the paddock area at Supercross in Nashville this past weekend. And that just made my jaw drop because, I mean, not only would that just be a great crowd for a race, but to have that many people touching and seeing and feeling everything that your sport has to offer in terms of those wonderful motorcycles, really, really impressive.
It's been a pretty exciting year on the track as well. What have you seen?
Yeah, I do follow it weekly. I do our how to watch post for NBCsports.com/motors every week. Of course, Dan Beaver does our weekly coverage, one of our freelancers. He does a great job. But yeah, I'm always fascinated by the rivalries in Supercross. And to go back to that Georgia Dome experience, I can remember the 2011 race, James Stewart versus Chad Reed. One of the greatest races I've seen all time. Like, forget the racing series. And that was built on this rivalry of Stewart versus Reed. And so I've been fascinated this year, 2023, by the Supercross 450 season, in that you've had a three-way rider battle with Tomac and Webb and Sexton. But it's been a little bit different in that, like, it seems like you haven't had the mind games that you've had with Stewart Reed or a couple of years ago when it was Cooper Webb versus Ken Roczen. So it's been a different kind of rivalry. And I thought it was interesting, listening to you and Will Christian and James Stewart and our other members of the Supercross broadcast team talking about what they were expecting from Cooper Webb coming into this race. It sounded like he had kind of exhausted his resources of being able to play a mental game with Eli Tomac, and he was going to throw whatever he had at him. And it seemed like the start of that heat race, Cooper Webb tried to throw something at Eli Tomac that didn't really work on that first lap coming out of the gate, and then he lost it in the next corner. So it was interesting. And again, I think that's what I think is great about Supercross, is that you have those rider rivalries. Sometimes they're a little bit more controversial or contentious. Sometimes, unfortunately, have injuries like you had in Nashville. But I think that's what really makes this sport so alluring.
Yeah, no doubt. And Webb, I talked to his mechanic on Friday, and he said, we have to win races. We have to come out super aggressive. He did. But that's the double-edged sword of racing, right? You talk about it on your podcast, NBC and NASCAR, every week. When you're pushing the edge, mistakes happen sometimes. It's not intentional. It's just the way it goes. But this is a much longer season this year. We are going to have playoffs, SuperMotocross World Championships at the end of the year. This is something you've had in NASCAR for a long time now. Format's changed a bit here and there. But how has the dynamic of NASCAR changed from what you've seen with playoffs? And what do you think that might lead to for this sport?
It's changed at 180 degrees, Weege. And I mean, now you have a true regular season and a true postseason, a true playoffs in NASCAR. And that format is now entering year 10, which on one hand, it feels like I can remember them announcing, it's entering year 20.
Well, 10 of the current elimination style.
Yes. Exactly. Entering year 10 of the current format. The Chase, which was the original playoff format, which essentially cordoned off the final 10 races as its own postseason. That started in 2004. But yes, this elimination style knockout round format where you have 3 races every round, that started in 2014. And it's definitely changed, I think, the competition in NASCAR region. I think we're certainly going to see that in Supercross. It's funny. I can remember having you on the NASCAR and NBC podcast in this very studio where I'm taping right now 6 years ago, when NASCAR was just moving into the stage racing era.
Right.
And you were predicting then that Supercross was going to go to a playoff. And I don't think in late 2016 we could imagine what it's actually going to become now, with having Supercross and motocross melded and having this postseason 3-race playoff between both series. I think it's great. I think that sometimes maybe it has been in the past a little bit confusing to sort of explain to people the difference between Supercross and outdoors. To bring all of that together and to incentivize it in a way to have the riders go all the way through and race hellbent for leather pretty much every week for several months, all the way through that championship in Charlotte and LA and Chicago. I think it's going to be great for Supercross.
Oh boy, can't wait to get there. It's a long way off. I'm sure you'll be helping us cover it. But anyway, good to have you at a race again. Anytime. Glad to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Weech.
Yep. We're heading to Denver this weekend. It'll be 3:30 Eastern time, the start of Race Day Live on Peacock, and then 9 o'clock Saturday night Eastern will be the start of the night show racing again on Peacock.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.